So before we even get into the nitty-gritty details of the randomizer, let's just turn it on and see how it works. So we're going to go into the SkyUI mod configuration menu and go to ToxiRandomizer, and we're just going to go to main and then enable. This is how you enable the randomizer. So we're just going to turn that right on and open up the game. And oh boy, here we go. This is exactly how I remember Skyrim. No different whatsoever. I mean, this is pretty random, right? I feel like this is pretty random. But what you need to do, man, look at that, look at that horse go. It's a bit much. What we need to do is actually start the game and wait until we've created our character. So I'm going to do that now. This is not even... I meant to show the bug of the intro breaking when you enable the randomizer too soon. This isn't even related to the randomizer. The game just broke. I just can't leave the main menu. Like I can't do anything now. There's nothing's happening. I have to restart the game. This is what a wonderful game that is very functional. Wonderful. So now that we have our character made and we're out of the cart ride, it's really the cart ride that is the big issue here. We can save our game. This is important. I recommend saving your game before and after enabling the randomizer. But we're going to go ahead and just enable the randomizer again. Once again, I'm going to keep all the settings at default. You can see our seed is set to our character's name. I'm going to go ahead and enable it. And we're just going to take a look at what does it do. You'll notice everyone turns purple here for a second. And then everyone's got different clothes. Ooh, well, some people don't seem to have much clothes on at all. But this is the randomizer. For the most part, this is what the randomizer does. It takes items in the game, whether that be items on NPCs or items in chests or items laying out in the world, and it randomizes them. Not a very tough concept to understand. That's what it do. That's what the randomizer does. There's a little bit more than that, and well, I suppose we can get into the on how it all works now. So here I am in the Riverwood Trader. It's a little awkward because they're just kind of staring at me in here silently. I guess it's weird because I'm standing here looking at them silently. It's a weird situation, but this seems like a good place to test out the randomizer and show the different options. So let's go ahead and do that. So to start off, we're going to go to the mod configuration menu and go to ToxiRandomizer, and we'll go to the main tab here so I can point out, well, a couple things. One is I switched to a different character, that lovely orc I made right in the beginning. I didn't really want to go through the intro, so we're on a different character here. But the other thing is, you saw me go ahead and click this enable randomizer, and that did what it says. It enabled the randomizer. But my recommendation, even if you don't stick around for the rest of the video and see me go through all the options, is don't click on this. Don't enable the randomizer. Go through the options over here and select what you want, then save your game, then enable the randomizer from here. Because once you enable the randomizer, those settings are pretty much set. You can change them after the fact, but there may be randomizations that already happened that you want to change, and it's just much easier when you can load a save. Plus, if the game crashes because it's Skyrim, all those settings will have saved. So that's my recommendation. But I'm going to go ahead and go through all of the options and explain what they do. So to start off, I'm going to enable the randomizer once again. Once I do that, we'll see that these two NPCs in here randomize, but nothing else in the room seems to. And that's just because we need to leave and come back because we just enabled the randomizer, and it works a little bit differently for containers and such. So we leave and come back, and we'll see there's a child in here. Why are there kids in here? I've never seen, like, were they talking to me when I came? Okay. Anyway, that's random. Not the randomizer's fault. Anyway, we'll see some of the stuff on the shelf randomized. And if we look in a chest here, this is a dresser, not a chest, but we'll see there's things in here that would not be in here normally. So we just needed to come in order for that part of the randomizer to get going. And it's worth pointing out that this randomizer works a bit differently from randomizers in other games you may have experienced. A lot of the times with randomizers, you change the files ahead of time. Like you run a program that changes the files and you play the game, say a Dark Souls randomizer, it literally changes the files to have different items. Whereas what's happening here is a system that I've been calling on-the-fly randomization, that at runtime while you are playing, it will randomize the items. There's benefits to this and there's drawbacks. A benefit to this is I can load my save here and say, I don't really like what they randomized to. And I can go in here and I can change my seed. I can say, hey, this new seed is called a better seed, ! And then I enable the randomizer again. Look at that. Look at that. They're wearing different stuff now. And once again, I have to leave and come back. And we'll see that different items randomized. This horse haunch that they just keep on the shelf is random, but these cheese wheels are the same. They haven't randomized. And if I go into this dresser now, they're even different objects. So that's one of the big benefits of having this on-the-fly randomization, is that it's very easy to adjust. We can adjust the settings we have on the fly, and it will reflect in the game. You don't have to close the game and re-randomize. So that's great. The unfortunate thing about it is it can take a little bit of time. It can be a little slow. Skyrim's scripting engine it's bad. There's not really a good way to put that. It's bad. So just keep that in mind. There are times where you will enter an area, and if there's a lot of things to randomize, it'll take a little bit of time. But anyway, that's just a quick aside. That's just a quick note. Let's go ahead and load our save again. And we'll go through all the options and see what they do. So I'm going to start out here on the Actors tab and go through these options. Most of the tabs are fairly similar, so it won't take that long to go through similar options, but we're going to start here. And the first option here is Enable Actor Randomization. This is on by default, but if you wanted to go in and perhaps only randomize chests in the game, you'd just disable this and anything else that doesn't have to do with containers and just have container randomization open. And you could totally do that. Same with if you just want it so NPCs have different equipment. You can totally do that. So that's what this is here for. This won't turn off the randomizer as a whole. It will just turn off this little section of it. If we go down here, we have a randomize spells option. This is pretty straightforward. It will try to give them random spells. Do keep in mind some of the things that the game considers spells may not be what you'd expect. It's not always like fireball and lightning bolt and healing and that sort of thing. Sometimes a spell, it might be something that is very situational, like maybe there's a quest and a door needs to open when an NPC comes up to it, and maybe they tie that to a spell. Or on the other side of things, there's a lot of mods that have a spell that opens up an options menu or something like that. So this option, if you're having any weirdness, might be the first one you go to turn off, because maybe NPCs are casting spells that you really don't want them to have. But in my experience, if it's a weird spell like that, they just don't cast it. So that's good. But this will try to give them random spells. I'm going to skip past the offsets real quick and go and the reset and go to the item options. If you see here, if we turn this off, it will not randomize items. So maybe you only want random spells. But when we have this on, we have all these options here. You can really, really fine tune what kind of items do and don't get randomized. By default, keys don't get randomized. And that's because that's the only thing that I found prevented me from progressing in the main story when I did a playtest. I did a playtest ahead of time. I streamed some of it. I can link that in the description. But I wanted to see, with the randomizer, can I beat the main story? And I was able to, but sometimes keys randomize that are really important. So that's off by default. But if you're not too concerned about being able to get through all the quest lines and stuff, it can be fun to have this on and just have like random keys in random people's inventories and be like, oh, now I can access this building on the other side of the world. I guess we can talk about the offsets now. By default, there are no offsets enabled here. There are some offsets enabled in the containers and world objects. As we can see here, we'll talk about those in a minute. But what offsets are is they create more unique randomizations depending on certain conditions. Your seed in the game might turn all iron axes into, I don't know, a glass sword. And so all iron axes in the game with the randomizer on will turn into a glass sword. All of that same type of item will randomize into the same different item. The offsets change this depending on, once again, certain conditions. So the most unique one, the one that you'll get the most unique randomization out of, is offsetting all items by the actor ID. Every NPC and actually object in the game has a unique ID associated with it. And so if you enable this, it'll make it so every NPC will have a unique result, for an example, for that iron axe. So it won't all end up as the same item. So this is great for if you want pretty much max randomization on NPCs. The problem with this, or you may see it as a problem, is if you go to a Whiterun, all the Whiterun guards are going to all be wearing different stuff. And it can be hard to identify that, oh, that's a guard, because you're not used to seeing all these crazy armor sets all over the place. So there's a couple options for that. One is you just don't do any offsets, and then all Whiterun guard armor will randomize to something else, and they'll all be matching. Or you can offset all items by actor name. So all Whiterun guards are called Whiterun guard. So all of their items with this enabled will randomize the same. The reason you may not want to do this, rather than just have everything turned off, is, say, the Thieves Guild. If everyone's wearing Thieves Guild armor, not everyone in the Thieves Guild has the same name, so they won't be all matching. So these are just different options to customize how you want your randomization to be. And it's, we have weapons and spells as well, in case you want everyone to have matching armor sets, but you want them to have unique weapons, or something like that. And finally, in the actors tab, we have this random item list reset. This is a little complicated. I contemplated not having it in here, but basically, if you change your seed, and change this to a different seed, the list of items that the NPCs want to randomize to may not change. And then you just come in here and click that, and it would clear out their items and hopefully randomize new ones. That's all that's for. So let's go ahead and skip over factions and go to containers and go through those options, because they're mostly the same. It's enable container randomization, then you choose what items you want to randomize, you'll notice you can't actually turn off item randomization because it's the same as if you just click this, because containers don't cast spells. They're containers. You can choose what you want randomized in containers, and the offsets just are a little different. Each container has its own ID, and that's checked by default. Makes loot a little more interesting. And there's also cell ID, and a cell is just the area you're in. So this can add a little bit more randomization, especially if this is off, but for the most part, it's not necessary. And if we go ahead and go to world objects, which are just objects sitting out in the world, like these cheese wheels over here. Once again, we have an enable. If you don't want that, you can turn off. But there's also a percentage chance. So with this cranked up to 1, this is a 100%, so read this as a percentage. This means that every object out in the world will attempt to randomize. And this is the same offsets pretty much as the containers. But this one's enabled by default rather than this one because, once again, I've done experimenting. This seems to give better results, but you have the option here. The other important thing to note with world objects is you can choose to disable the physics when they randomize. Sometimes shops just become an absolute mess when you have a lot of things randomizing at once, so it helps with that. But it also helps that if you enter a cell with just a ton of items in it, which most of the time that's not going to be the case, but sometimes the game can crash when there's too much physics going on. So you can go ahead and turn that off. Oh, one more thing to note is you'll see that miscellaneous is grayed out here, which this is a really kind of annoying thing with the Sky UI mod configuration menu, is when I hover over this, you can't actually see that I added text. I added text down here. Look at that. Look at that. If I go with the keyboard down at the bottom there, you'll see that and it tells you it's non-functional. Technically, this does work, but I've removed it for the time being because a lot of the times miscellaneous objects randomize into things that you cannot pick up and things that will block your path and stuff like that, and it just doesn't really make the game super playable. So that's disabled by default. And that for the most part is the biggest chunk of the randomizer. There's really not that much to it. You just kind of choose what you want to randomize and how unique the randomization is. The majority of the randomizer is an item randomizer. One more thing to note before we move on to the faction explanation is underneath experimental, at least in this release, this may change in the future, we have this change enchantment rate option here. This is under experimental because, as I talked about previously, the randomizer can be a little slow to randomize. It's usually not too bad, but with these experimental options on, it can slow down a lot. So it's not quite in the main categories as of right now. But what this will do is it'll allow you to choose the category of items you want to change the rate in which you'll find a random enchanted item, and you'll choose the chance. So basically, as it stands, due to the fact that the ratio from unenchanted items to enchanted items of the game is skewed heavily towards enchanted items. Like, if you look at a list of items in the game, there's way more enchanted versions of items than unenchanted versions. And that makes sense because the game, you might have an iron helmet and you're not going to have 20 duplicates of the same iron helmet, but you might have an entry in the game for an enchanted iron helmet with fortify health, or a different one with fortify stamina. So by default, without any of this selected, you're going to see a lot more enchanted items than non-enchanted items, and so that's why this section is here, even though it doesn't work all that well, or it slows things down quite a bit. My word of advice is, if you are going to use this option, put this at like 50%. That's still a lot of enchanted items, but it won't slow things down that much. The reason it does slow things down is it just kind of has to keep randomizing until it finds an unenchanted item, and that's slow. So to explain faction randomization, I went to Riften. mostly because there's a lot of people here, and well, it's fun to mess with faction randomization when there's a lot of people around. So the way that faction randomization works is it adds NPCs to one of 3 factions that the mod adds to the game. These 3 factions are rock, paper, and scissors. And the way that rock, paper, and scissors faction works is, if we look over to the explanation on the right, people in the rock faction will attack the people in the scissors faction on sight. Scissors will attack paper, and paper will attack rock. The rock, paper, scissors is just an easy way for me to visualize the triangular nature of that. But basically, this adds random aggression both between NPCs in the game and between NPCs and the player, because you can have the player join any one of these factions. So let's go ahead and just show this by pumping up the actor join chance to 100% and enabling the randomizer. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when we do that. Now, there are a lot of people in Riften, so it does take a little bit of time for the randomization to kick in, but as things start to kick in, you'll see people stop being happy with each other, and they just start fighting. Now, I pumped this to 100%, which almost always ensues in chaos. I don't know what's going on with this guy over here. He's got like big old tentacles sticking out of him. But with the faction randomization at 100%, what this does is it basically adds a third of all NPCs to rock, a third to scissors, and a third to paper. And so there's a pretty good chance that they're all going to attack each other. But as you'll notice, they're not attacking me, and that's because we didn't choose to join a faction. If we go in here and go back to the faction randomization, and I say join scissors, I like scissors. Anyone in the opposing faction, which is here, I'm gonna have to look at my little guide because I can't remember the way I set it up. I think it's rock, if I recall correctly. Yes, so anyone in the rock faction will attack me. It looks like they're not attacking me, so they must be paper. There we go. So I went on over to Whiterun, and Irileth really doesn't like me because of the faction I'm in. Which, as you might imagine, if I was trying to complete the main story, would be quite a challenge. Sadly, I don't think I have any footage of it. I'll put it in here if I do, but when I was trying to complete the main story on my test playthrough, there were a lot of NPCs that I had to use a calm spell on, because even though I had the randomization set to 15%, it was an unlucky 15%, and I had to calm NPCs down before I could talk to them and continue the story. And that's kind of the for me, the draw of the faction randomization. It's fun to see the NPCs attacking each other every so often. I don't recommend this at 100%, but it's fun to see them attacking each other every so often. But the thing I like more is that there's this added challenge of NPCs just really not liking you and attacking you on sight. And with that explained, that's pretty much all the main options. Most of these things should be self-explanatory, so you just go in and read the description at the bottom and enable it if you want, or not. But before I leave this video, I do want to show a couple of these, a couple options here. Well, first of all, the shader effect, that just, if you turn this off, that just means they don't turn purple when they're randomizing. The purple just means it's randomizing, and when it's not purple, it's randomized. It's as simple as that. But this close shop menu is kind of problematic, so I'm going to go ahead and show that now. So here I am again in the Riverwood Trader, so I can show how the shop randomization works. There's a lot of quirks to it because of how Skyrim in general works with shops. The way that Skyrim does shops is the contents of a shop, when you talk to someone, is just containers around them, specific containers around them that they're allowed to sell from. In fact, if I go and go under the floor here, you'll see there's all these chests down here, and these are all chests that have contents that are meant to be sold by the shopkeeper in here. The randomizer randomizes these chests like any other, but the problem is, well, there's kind of a couple problems. The game does a couple things. One is, if the shop needs to restock, which the shop needs to restock the first time you talk to a shopkeeper, and then like every couple days, something like that. If it needs to restock, it will only do so the moment you open the shop. And normally this wouldn't be a problem, not a big issue. You just check if you need to randomize when you open a shop. But the other problem is there's a lot of things you can't do while a menu is open. And a shop, the shop menu counts. So the game's paused, so there's a lot of things you can't do. So what ends up happening is, in this version of the randomizer, there's some pretty slow code that determines if the shop needs to randomize. If it's restocked, it needs to randomize. And if it does need to randomize, it kicks you out. It kicks you out of the shop because that's the only way that I could find as of right now. And if you have any information on how to do this without kicking the player out of the shop, please let me know. But the items in the menu do not update even after you randomize. So basically, well, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this. I go in here, say, what have you got for sale?
Odds and ends, that sort of thing.
It says checking shop for randomization. And sometimes it'll boot you out immediately, and then you go back in and have to wait again. It does look like some of the shop has randomized. Maybe all the shop is randomized, but I assume if we wait here long enough, the game will go, okay, I've finished randomizing, and it'll kick us out. So I'll let it sit here for a minute, and when it does, I will return. Okay, I swear the one time I wanted the game to kick me out of the shop, it didn't, so I'm just going to go ahead and try again.
Some may call this junk.
Go in here. There we go. It booted me out immediately. If I go back into the shop, I assume, based off of prior experience and also being the mod author, I assume it's going to kick me out again. So I'll give it a minute and see if it does. Okay, I've been sitting here for quite a while. This seems to be one of those weird instances where it's actually working a little bit better than it has for me in the past. That's totally fine. I'll accept it. But the point is, usually, in my experience, the way this works, you get kicked out of the shop a couple times, and then it's good. It's randomized until the next time the shop restocks. But if that kicking you out of the shop issue is too annoying for you, which is very understandable, you can go in here, go into main, and you can uncheck auto close shop menu. What that will do is it'll make it so when you go into the shop, it will still say in the top left, checking for randomization, but it won't kick you out when it's randomized. It'll just give you another little message up there that says, hey, please reopen the shop, but it won't close it for you. So if that's what you prefer, which is very understandable, then that's how you can do that. But as you can see, the shop is in fact randomized, and that's what we want to see here. So something that you might experience, although it seems rare with the randomizer, is it may cause a crash. This happened to me basically in one point during my playtest, and as far as I could tell, it was just because the randomizer was trying to give an NPC a mod item that really wasn't supposed to go on an NPC. And so I wanted to touch on that so I can demonstrate a workaround. This is written on the mod page, but showing it in practice might be a little bit easier to understand. So let's say for a moment we walk into this inn here, and the randomizer starts going, everyone starts getting their randomized stuff, and then we crash. Although they're attacking each other. Okay, that's great. Let's say that resulted in a crash and not violence. What you would have to do is you'd start your game back up, and hopefully you'd have an autosave before this. You could try going in and quickly turning off the randomizer, but hopefully you have an autosave before this, which the game by default makes a few autosaves, so not a big deal. But I have this quick save before entering, and what we're going to do is we're going to temporarily disable the randomizer. And the way we're going to do this is go into the settings, and what we're not going to do is we're not going to uncheck this. What happens when you uncheck the enable randomizer is it basically tries to, quote, uninstall the randomizer. It's not that it doesn't really revert randomization. Like, your save file is going to be randomized in some places pretty much forever, even when you uncheck this. But this tries to clear out a lot of the data it won't be using in your save file when you uncheck this. But you don't really want that, because if you want to keep using the randomizer, you want that data to be in your save file. So what you need to do is uncheck actor randomization, maybe container randomization, maybe world object randomization, depending on what's crashing your game. If you don't know, just uncheck them all. And this temporarily disables the randomizer. The randomizer technically is still storing all that data because we didn't uncheck the main randomization checkbox, but it's not going to try to randomize anything. So we can go in here. No one will randomize. Hopefully no one will attack each other. It might happen depending on... Nope, no one's randomizing. So we can get our business done in here, whatever we're going to do. Maybe we wanted this bowl. And then we can leave. And go into the menu again. And just turn these back on. And that's how you temporarily disable the randomizer if there's any issues, or maybe you just want to turn it off for a little bit. That's the temporary way to do it. Once again, in this tab here, unchecking this will turn off the randomizer in a more permanent way. It's not really permanent, but it might change the randomization in weird ways when you turn it back on. So just a thing to note. Also, another quick thing to note, there's a lot of things they're on the mod page, so just read through that. But for faction randomization to work, you actually need this enabled as well. So if you only want faction randomization, which I wouldn't blame you, that's it's fun, you need to have this enabled, and then just disable the items and the spells. And that's all. And I think that's pretty much everything. I'm not sure there's much more to talk about in this overview. I guess I should mention this works in the Anniversary Edition, which is notably, I should go show this. Let me go to the main menu real quick. Actually, before I go to the main menu, you'll see that my game version is down here. It's quite faint, but you can check this menu for your game version. Anything that's 1.6 blah 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 is the Anniversary Edition. The other way to check is if you start your game and it says Special Edition, like from Steam, you start up your game, it says Special Edition, and this pops up here, you're on what the community calls the Anniversary Edition, even though you haven't purchased the anniversary upgrade. It's a really confusing thing that happened after Bethesda released the anniversary edition, but I feel like that's a good thing to point out because a lot of people don't really understand that, and rightfully so. It's a confusing naming convention. But anyway, this mod will work on anniversary or the pre-anniversary special edition, and it'll also work in VR. Maybe I'll throw some VR footage in here or something just to prove it. But it should work for all of those. So you're good to go on almost every version, not the original Skyrim, but almost every version of Skyrim on PC. So there you go. Hopefully I explained everything, and hopefully I didn't drag on. Dragon. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Hopefully the randomizer seems cool to you, and you check it out and have a good time. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I hope you have fun.